you for participating in this virtual discussion. If you are joining us on YouTube, please use the chat feature to actively engage in this program. We can only solve our community's most challenging and pressing problems if we develop meaningful solutions together. Enjoy tonight's conversation.
Hi, Chief Justice Beasley. My name is Alexis Murray, and I serve as the Student Bar Association President here at North Carolina Central University School of Law, as well as the Black Law Student Association President. Hi, Chief Justice Beasley. My name is Alexis Murray, and I serve as the Student Bar Association President here at North Carolina Central University School of Law, as well as the Black Law Student Association President. And I got some wonderful women in leadership here with me today.
Hi, Chief Justice Beasley. My name is Shatoria Coleman, and I serve as the Vice President of the Student Bar Association, as well as the Christian Legal Society.
Hi, Chief Justice Beasley. My name is Yandine Anderson, and I serve as the Vice Chair for the NCCU Moot Court Board.
Hi, Chief Justice Beasley. My name is Sonia Robinson, and I serve as the President for both Women's Law Caucus as well as the Innocence Project.
Hi, Chief Justice Beasley. My name is Destiny Smith, and I serve as Vice President of Civil Rights Society.
Welcome to NCCU!
The Road to Justice Tour, and we are so honored to have Chief Justice Cheri Beasley to be on our campus for her first stop on the Road to Justice Tour. And without further ado, we will have our welcome and greetings by the chairpersons of the PACE, which is the Political Action Committee for the Student Government Association here at NCCU. And so first we will have Jasmine Abney, and then we will have Anaya Hairston to bring greetings from PACE. And then we will start our very important conversation between the students and Chief Justice Beasley. Ms. Abney?
Good evening, everyone. I am Jasmine Abney. I am co-chair of the Political Action and Civic Engagement Committee of SGA. I serve alongside Ms. Anaya Hairston. Political action and civic engagement is essential here at NCCU, and that is what we are here to encourage among our student body. We look forward to seeing you all vote here this fall at Turner Law School, and we look forward to engaging you all in activities such as this as we move forward. This is just the beginning, and we are excited to start here. And so I'll let Anaya tell you all about what we're here to do.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Anaya Hairston, and I am a junior political science student here at North Carolina Central University. Now, first off, I would like to thank you all for tuning in to this evening's discussion with Chief Justice Cheri Beasley of the North Carolina Supreme Court. We are thrilled to be the Chief Justice's first stop on her HBCU tour, The Road to Justice. Now tonight we are here to have a very important conversation with the Chief Justice about her thoughts on student interest in the road to justice. Not only that, but we are hoping to get a deeper understanding of her roles and responsibilities as Chief Justice and experiences and moments that have made her the woman that she is today. Now, many of you may be streaming from NCCU's YouTube and Facebook, but we also have students in a live chat via Zoom and several students that will be joining us this evening that are pursuing degrees in law, criminal justice, political science, and mass communications. This is an amazing event and opportunity for students to engage with the Chief Justice, and we are very excited to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Abney and Ms. Hairston. And again, we are excited to have you, Madam Chief Justice, and I know you're anxious to enter this conversation with the students. And as it should be, the first questioner will be Miss NCCU, Amani Johnson, who's a senior political science major here at NCCU. Miss NCCU, Amani?
Good evening. So our first question for you is, what influenced you to pursue a career in the justice system?
Well, thank you so much, Ms. NCCU, Imani. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be here and to be a part of this conversation. I'm grateful to the Chancellor and to Dean Lewis and to Dr. Hall and for all of you for working so hard to pull this together. You know, I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, and I've worked hard just like you all are, and I've just known that advocacy is so important. I knew that early on, really frankly, as a child, and so I worked hard just like you all, decided to go to law school, had frankly hoped to go to law school at North Carolina Central University, and about 3 weeks before law school started, I got a full scholarship from the University of Tennessee College of Law, and so I am a graduate there. But I knew that, and I've always known that access to justice is hugely important. I've known that it's really been important for me all of my life, even as a child, to serve underserved communities. And I think when we follow our passions in that way, we have impacts far beyond what we could ever possibly fathom. So this tour is important as I share my experiences with you, but also as you share with me about the things that you care about and you're concerned about.
Thank you so much. So the next question is, what does equal access to justice under the law look like? And what steps do you take to achieve this and maintain it?
Well, you know, equal justice under the law is something that so many people are questioning right now, right? There are lots of folks who have real concerns about justice in our courts, and there are people who believe that there are two kinds of justice in North Carolina and in the courts across this nation. And equal justice really does mean that people have access to processes, to courts, to justice, and justice doesn't really begin in the courtroom. And I think often when we think about justice, we think about justice as meted out in courts. But in North Carolina, when 1 in 5 children is hungry, I mean, that's an access to justice issue. It's not just a hunger issue. And so when we think about equal justice, we really have to think about what equality means and how do we make it equal. There are a lot of folks who have been disenfranchised, whether it's because of race or gender or religion. And so when we talk about equal justice, if we're not all starting at the same place and the playing field is not level, then we've got to determine how best to make those adjustments in order such that there is equality. So much of what I've been doing since I became the Chief Justice is really instituting programs which allow people to better access our courts. We have more than 50% of the people who come to our courts are not represented by lawyers, and so we need programs in place where they can much better and easily navigate our court system without the assistance of an attorney.
Okay, our next question will, sorry, Imani. Thank you, Imani, for those wonderful questions. Our next question will be from Ms. Hairston. She will come back and again, she is a co-chair of the Political Action Committee for the NCCU Student Government Association, and she's a junior political science major. Ms. Hairston.
All right, now in 2019, you made history by becoming the first African American woman to serve as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina and one of 2 seated in the entire nation. How does this shape the way that you approach your role on the NC Supreme Court?
Well, you know, the Supreme Court of North Carolina is 200 years old, and so it certainly was a history-making moment. The one thing that was abundantly clear when I became the Chief Justice was that this moment and my service was far greater than myself. I literally received messages from people all over the world who were so excited about my service and about my appointment. And it really helped me to see the magnitude of my service and for people around the world to feel that this was in some way a small victory for themselves, because We don't see a lot of African American women, not just in this nation, but in any nation, serving as Chief Justice. And so it is never lost on me, the magnitude of my service. And it really does make me want to do more and to serve better and to make sure that our courts really are accessible to people, and to acknowledge that there have been disparities in our courts, and more than acknowledge, to make some changes to make sure that we are being held accountable, having very difficult but constructive conversations around how we must have better outcomes in our courts. And even when we are well-intentioned and don't mean to discriminate or to show our implicit biases, when we do that, and that it is in some way harmful to people, we must acknowledge it and we must change. And so we've got a whole commission in the works to make those efforts happen.
Thank you. Our next question will be from a senior criminal justice major, Miracle Davis. Ms. Davis?
Hello, Chief Justice Beasley. My first question for you is, NCCU's Turner School of Law is one of 8 law programs at an HBCU. How important is it for you to establish opportunities for HBCU students to gain experience in the justice system?
Well, Ms. Davis, it is really very important to me to help law students and other students receive experiences in the justice system. And let me just say this, when we think about justice, we often think about criminal justice. But the justice system is so much more than that. It is the slip and fall at the food line. It is juvenile justice. It is civil justice. And it's evictions and a whole lot of other things. So we have to be mindful of that. One of the things I have always committed to, and I have always made it very clear, especially to the leadership at the law school, that I will always commit to hiring a student as one of my research assistants or law clerks in my chambers. And I have one now. Her name is Rashonda Murphy. She's fantastic. But that's been really important. And in my chambers, law students or law graduates have experiences beyond just research and writing, but we make sure that they really have full opportunities outside of that. And so, but in terms of students, I mean, I have mentored lots of students at this university for sure, and I always welcome students to call me, and I will tell you this, I can say this in a room of 2,000. But it's important to reach out. It's important to have those conversations with people who know things differently, not more, but differently. And so whether it's me or other people who you'd like to know about or whose career you might like to pattern, or you should always reach out. And for people my age, reaching out really does not mean sending a text. It does mean picking up the phone, as antiquated as that sounds, because relationship building is really what that's about. But that kind of cultivation is, number one, an obligation from me to you, but number two, it's also a way that you can help yourselves.
Thank you for that. And my last question is, do you perceive yourself and your colleagues to be gatekeepers? If so, how do you handle that responsibility?
I don't perceive us to be gatekeepers. The cases that come before our courts are usually come from a lower court, and it's our responsibility to follow the rule of law and the administration of justice. I do think that my colleagues are guardians of the law and the rule of law, and that we are charged with upholding the law and applying it fairly and equally. And while I am confident that the decisions of the court that have been made years before I was even a lawyer are hugely important in determining what happens in cases today, the world changes, and we now have cell phones and so many other kinds of inventions, and so many of the cases that come before our court really are novel or new or issues that have never come before the court before. And so as you think about your own scholarship and your own contributions to whatever it is you decide to do in this world, it's important to know that you all are often moving and shaping the law in ways that none of us ever could have imagined.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. Our next question will come from Junior Criminal Justice Major Caleb Ingram. Mr. Ingram?
Greetings, Chief Justice Beasley. So my first question is, how are students, specifically those attending North Carolina Central and other historically Black colleges, how are they affected by your policies and practices of your court?
Affected by
the policies and practices of your court?
Well, I think, the Chief Justice leads the Supreme Court of North Carolina, but she also leads the entire judicial branch of government. And there are courts all over the state. We have 100 counties and over 300 court facilities and almost 7,000 elected officials and employees in our courts all across the state. And you are impacted to the extent that you must follow the laws as all of us do, but also, I mean, in the ways that you choose to be engaged. And I really hope that you do choose to be engaged in some way, whether you're a criminal justice major or not, that you see that you have a role in the work of justice in your communities, and so much of that has to be reflected in the work of our courts. As the Chief Justice, it really has been important to me for us to have community outreach, and so I've been really excited about the fact that we have school justice partnerships where we are collaborating with district attorneys and public defenders and law enforcement and county commissioners to really galvanize, to keep children out of the courtrooms and into the classrooms. I've been excited about the fact that we have a Faith and Justice Alliance, so that we are training clergy to be able to identify legal issues and to refer folks who come to them to legal assistance at no cost to them. So there are a host of ways in which you can be impacted, but I think more important than that, there are a host of ways in which you can be engaged, because the society is for all of us, and you all are talented and smart and inquisitive and provide ingenuity for all of us. And so in the ways in which you possibly, frankly, can't even see that your careers might be shaped going forward, I mean, it really is important to know more, to determine how best you might find yourselves in service, whether it's to the courts or to the communities. And I truly do believe that justice happens in the courtroom, but I also think it has to happen outside of the courtroom. And I think judges have a responsibility for making sure that it happens outside of the courtroom as well. And so that's part of the school justice partnerships and the faith and justice. But there are so many ways that you can be engaged. And I'd love to talk with you more about that if you're interested.
Thanks for that. I definitely am more than interested about anything you can give. So for my next question, how can Black and Brown people continue to rely on the judicial system when we seem to always fall on the other side of justice?
Well, I do believe that that's why it's important for courts, the makeup of courts, to reflect the diversity of the state. And I'm pleased to tell you that the North Carolina Supreme Court is the most diverse Supreme Court in the nation, with 3 African Americans, 3 women, and the first Jewish member in 200 years. And I do believe that in great part, that helps to instill some confidence. But we also know that the prior Chief Justice commissioned a study which shows that people do believe that there are 2 kinds of justice, and that there are racial disparities and gender disparities in our courts. And as the Chief Justice, it really is my responsibility for us to be working on not how to dispel that, but for how to make that go away, for that not to be the case. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that even when judges don't intend to be biased or to have racial practices in the outcomes of the cases, that is in fact happening. And so it's not just how people perceive the courts, but if we know for sure that those kind of disparate impacts are happening, the Chief Justice has to lead and say we can't do that anymore. When George Floyd died, I made a public statement which was featured in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, because it was important to me to set the standard about what is acceptable in our courts. And I'm thankful that so many of our court leaders have come to me. We've already begun programming around educating judges and having these really difficult conversations, and other court leaders who said to me, we know we need to do something, but we just didn't know what to do. And I'm hearing from Chief Justices from all over the nation. I was the first Chief Justice to make a statement, and I think it was appropriate to do that. Often Chief Justices do not speak out, but when thousands of people are protesting in the streets in North Carolina and around this nation, the rallying cry was very clear to me. And we had already begun to work on some initiatives around pretrial release and some other kinds of things around bond and bail. But your question around the reassurances for Black and brown people in our courts is a very important one. And I really must, as the Chief Justice, take responsibility for making sure that we do better in our courts.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Our next question will come from Ms. Abney, who we have met already, but she is a co-chair of the Political Action Committee, PACE, for the NCCU Student Government Association, and she is a junior political science major. Ms. Abney?
Chief Justice Beasley, being that you are the first African-American woman to serve in this role, how do you ensure that others from diverse and underrepresented groups have similar opportunities to serve?
Well, Ms. Abney, it's a great question, and I am the first, and the implication in your question is that I really should not be the last, and I think you're right about that. I think it's important, and it always has been important to me, even before I became the Chief Justice, to mentor and to bring people along. I mean, this journey is not really for me. It's a privilege to be the first. It's a privilege to be able to serve as a judge, and I've now served for 21 years. And it's never been lost on me that I really do have an obligation to mentor, to help to cultivate. And I got a lot of young friends along the way who were superstars in their own right. But I'm thrilled about the fact that I, in some small way, was instrumental in helping them to find their direction or to choose a career path. And while, you know, law is my career choice, it doesn't have to be yours in order for you to be interested in law and justice. You can do that in any field. I did not know I was going to law school. I applied to many kinds of graduate programs, and I could see myself serving as an advocate in a whole host of professions. And so you can choose for yourself what that looks like. But it is my responsibility, and I take it very seriously. And I frankly like to be around young people. You think differently, you calculate differently, you're bright, you're certainly far more technologically savvy than I am. And the relationships are always reciprocal, because even though I am giving, I always find that I am experiencing and receiving just as much and sometimes more.
Thank you for that beautiful answer. And the second part of my question is that you serve as a role model, clearly, to so many young people. Do you ever feel that you have to be perfect? And if you do, how do you manage that?
No, I would fall way short. I don't feel a sense I feel that it is important for me to be human, and I, just like everybody else, I certainly have my shortcomings. When I made my statement about after George Floyd died, I was actually very emotional during the statement, and frankly, I thought it was important for. I almost didn't give the statement. The advisors around me, nobody really wanted me to give the statement, but I couldn't sleep. I felt like I really needed to say something, and I knew as Chief Justice it was important for me to say something. But I knew before I started that I was going to be emotional about the fact that we are at really a crossroads and an intersection in our nation and in our state. And it really does, I think, give us an opportunity. But I don't strive for perfection. I know that it's important that as a leader, I surround myself with people who are smart and talented and capable as well. And so I also don't feel like I have to do it all. But it's also important for people to see me as human. I have a family, I'm married, I have twin sons who are 19 years old and they're in college, and we have normal life with a dog and all that kind of normal stuff. And so part of my success, frankly, is that you do see my humanity. And for us to hide who we are really does cheat those around us, I think.
Thank you. I appreciate your transparency.
Mr. NCCU, you're up next, and that would be Nigel Hawley Newkirk, who is a junior mass communications major. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Newkirk, I'm sorry.
It's fine. I have two last names. So first, I would like to say thank you, Chief Justice, for being such a great representative for African American men and women by upholding this prestigious position. So on to my first question, I want to say here at NCCU, our motto is truth and service. So as an honorary Eagle for the University of North Carolina Central University, how do you apply this to your efforts as Chief Justice?
You know, Mr. Newkirk, I think it's really important that I think it was Ms. Abney who used the word transparency. And I do believe, I mean, I've been an elected judge for 21 years, and I think it's important that I have never, ever seen a case, I've never seen a person who was worth me risking my integrity and my ethics. And it has been important to me to be truthful and to stand on the truth. Frankly, in everything that I do. I mean, my work has to be grounded in the truth. My service has, frankly, for my own well-being in great part, been vast because there just seems to me so much work that needs to be done. And so being a judge has been a great conduit and a great way, I think, to gain entree in ways that I otherwise probably would not have been able to do so. And I think that those that I serve, I hope have been the beneficiaries of that. But none of that means anything if what I do is not grounded in truthfulness and doesn't rest well with my soul.
Thank you for that. And my second question is, how are your constituents able to hold you accountable?
They vote. That's it. Which is why I want you all to appreciate why that voting is so important, that you all get a chance to determine for yourselves who will lead you. And I'm sure that so many of you all are student leaders, you all are clearly very talented. I mean, you all exude scholarship here. But I think it's important that with that and with your activities around social justice and being mindful that so much of the work that you do and will continue to do will impact your communities in great ways. I think it's important to also appreciate the fact that whether you were protesting or not, that when you add protesting with voting, I mean, that's really the truest sense of being able to express your voice and the truest sense of empowerment. And the protesting can be effective. It has certainly moved conversations and moved corporations and moved governmental systems. So it has been very impactful. But protesting without exercising your vote is really kind of all for naught, because the protests really do say, we are sick and tired of systems that are not fair. And you all are the leaders, not just of the next generation, you're the leaders now. And it's important that when you think about North Carolina Central University as a research university, as a university that is often looking for funding for the programming and scholarship programs that you have here. In every sense of scholarship, it is important that people recognize that you are the forces that I know you are to be reckoned with. It is so important. And so please know that there really is a connectivity between the chancellors and the professors and Dr. Hall's and Dean Lewis's moves to get scholarship dollars here, to get IBM and Google to look at this university. There is a correlation between those efforts, because you are the scholars and you deserve the research opportunities, and voting. There really is. I'll tell you that in 2016, I was aware, because I'm very close to this university, that on election day, there was a line of students wrapped around the voting area all the way down. But unfortunately, so many of those students were not registered to vote. They didn't know it. They didn't know it. Just think about the power behind all. It was beautiful. I actually came by, I saw the line. It was beautiful to see all the students excited and enthusiastic about casting the vote. And you choose how you cast it. There's no political party that you must choose. You choose for yourself how you exercise your right to vote. But it's important for us to have the information, to make sure that we're registered, to know what the voting deadlines are, to know that if you want to register by mail, you need to go ahead and send in your application to do that. It's important to know that if you do vote by mail, that you have another signatory witnessing your vote before your ballot before you send it in. It's important to know when early voting stops, and it's important to know when you actually have to go to the polls. It's important for you to know that. But I do want you to know that there's a correlation between your empowerment to elect the people that you want to have serve you, and the activities and the scholarship and the research and all of the things that happen in greatness on this university's campus. And we're looking to you. We're really looking to you to make the impact that you're so capable of making.
Okay. Our next set of questions will come from Miss Alexis Murray, who is a 3L law student, which is very important. That means she's getting ready to get out of here. And she is the president of the Student Bar Association and the Black Law Student Association. Miss Murray.
Chief Justice Beasley, what is your vision for the future of the North Carolina judicial system, and what changes do you deem necessary and why?
Well, Miss Murray, and I should be hearing from you because you're 3L, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You know, it is important to me to make sure, if we know, and we have the studies that show us that most North Carolinians have no trust and confidence in our courts, it is my goal to instill trust and confidence in our courts. And that's far beyond any words I can possibly say. I've talked about the Faith and Justice Alliance. I've not talked about guide and file. I mean, it can be difficult to figure out how to navigate through. And so now you can go to this portal, guide and file, and you can follow the prompts. You can file a lawsuit for absolute divorce, domestic violence protective order, the small estates, and evictions. And they're adding some more causes of action along the way. But to be able to print that out, take it to the clerk's office, file it, and then present it to the judge is a powerful way for people to be able to navigate. I mean, and so when systems become more accessible, that's hugely important. We have a COVID-19 small business and nonprofit initiative to help folks who are bankrupt and can't quite figure out how the CARES Act applies and all that. Offering free legal services for people who need to move through that. We're working on increasing the number of substance abuse treatment programs that we have through our courts. It's important to hold people accountable on the one hand, but it's also important to give people a second chance. And so we need more. We know that during this pandemic, substance abuse is up. Unfortunately, we also know that domestic violence is up, and we know that child abuse is up. And so courts have to be responsive. And it is one thing, I think, to to hold people accountable, but we really do have to set them up for success in their lives. In North Carolina, we are the 9th most populous state in the nation. And we have over 1 million people who are driving with their licenses suspended, not because they have in some way broken the law, but because they could not pay the fines and fees once assessed by the court. And those fines and fees snowball year after year, and it's not uncommon, especially in Durham County, for people's licenses to be revoked 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Well, we take for granted what a driver's license will do, right? I mean, it is a barrier if you don't have one. And so we are in the process of helping thousands of people, and we've already begun to help people restore their driver's licenses. We're working with judges and district attorneys to forgive the fees and help to reinstate driver's licenses. People can go to a website now. This is all of this is just happening since I became the Chief Justice. So if you go to ncfairchance.org, you can look up, if your driver's license is revoked, you can look up to determine whether or not you're eligible to have your driver's license restored. So in many of these cases, we're restoring driver's licenses, but we can't even notify the people that their licenses are ready to be restored, because we just can't get in touch with them. But that access to justice restores confidence in our courts. So we have a host of programs that we're doing like that. So hearing the cases on the Supreme Court, hugely important to the work that I do every single day. But when people have access and can truly figure out how to navigate through the court system and to see that they can find some relief, I think that's hugely important.
Thank you for that. I truly look forward to seeing how the judicial system improves under your leadership. My next question is, since you have been Chief Justice, what has been, in your opinion, the most influential case decided by the North Carolina Supreme Court?
Wow, there have been so many cases, really so many cases. We've just heard some Racial Justice Act cases recently. We have heard redistricting cases. I'll tell you about one of my most interesting cases. I was actually serving on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. It was a juvenile case, 13 years old boy, special education student who was accused of breaking into a house. And the issue was whether or not the police officer had the authority to question this child in the school. The door was cracked open, the assistant principal was in the room with the police officer, and the issue was whether or not this child was in custody while he was being questioned. And so I was new to the Court of Appeals. My colleagues held that he was not in custody, and I held that he was. I just dissented and held that he was. Went to the North Carolina Supreme Court. The Supreme Court also agreed with my colleagues that this young man was not in custody. It goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, and Justice Sotomayor writes the opinion, and she agrees with my dissent. So that's why I say it's important to stand courageously. It's not important to go along with the crowd. It's important to do what you believe the law dictates that you do. I will tell you that Justice Sotomayor actually quoted a passage from my dissent, but she didn't give me credit for it. I mean, word for word, I was like, wow. But little would we think that a case that starts in Orange County, North Carolina, would ultimately have jurisprudential impact across the nation. So that's why I'm telling you, whether you're a lawyer or not, how you serve it can be so impactful in so many ways that we can never even predict, but it's important to serve anyway.
Thank you for that, and we're going to charge it to her law clerk that she didn't give you that. So for the last question, any words of advice for students that may aspire to be a Supreme Court judge one day?
You know, I was an adult. I had actually graduated from law school before I saw an African-American woman who served as a judge. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. And so for myself, I didn't know how to think it. I didn't know how to dream it. I didn't know how to, I mean, you're at a place now that you've seen it, not a whole lot, but you've seen it. And there's certainly lots of judges, many of whom are alumni of this school, the law school, who are serving right here in Durham County and across the nation, which is a beautiful thing. But I would say this, I think often, and this is whether you want to be a lawyer or not, or whatever you want to do, often I think when when we see that there's an opportunity available, we say, oh, this person is more well connected, or this person has better grades, or this person is better looking, and so they should go for the opportunity and I really shouldn't. And we should not discount ourselves like that. And often people around you may say it can't be done, but they're not really charged with having the vision for your life. And you get to determine what that should look like, and you need to feel that sense of empowerment. You should surround yourself with people who will encourage you and who will be truthful with you, because that piece is also very important. But who will also, even when they can't see it for you, will embrace your own vision and your own hopefulness for yourself. There's certainly no way that I ever possibly could have predicted or even thought about, frankly, being the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina. But I never, ever, and this is looking back, okay, because once upon a time I was your age, right? So this is looking way back. But the one thing that I have, in hindsight, been able to realize is that I never, even when I didn't know what the course was going to look like, because frankly we never do. When we say yes, right, Dr. Hunt, we really never really know what that journey is going to look like. But I never said no. Even when I didn't know what I was necessarily even walking into. In my first judgeship, I mean, I knew what a judge did, but I didn't really know. And you don't fully know until you make the effort and put yourself out there. So always go for it. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain, and you have so much to offer.
Right. Thank you for all those for all those responses. We have a little time, so I'm gonna ask you a tough question. I think
these are all.
Now these are very tough questions, but and it's a simple question though. But what is justice in your mind? What does justice really mean to you? You say this is a Road to Justice tour, so exactly what does that mean?
You know, I think all of us, you're a professor, Dr. Holland, and you help to determine what justice is and what it looks like. And all of us have a role in that. And in the very same way that I said earlier, I truly believe that justice happens in the courtroom, but I also believe it happens outside of the courtroom and in our communities. Earlier, I think we talked about equal justice under the law. And equal justice under the law is in the Constitution. It is a very important concept. I think it's also important to be thoughtful about equity. And what does equity mean? That when we don't all start at the same place, is equity required? And how do you get to equal if you don't have equity? And so I think we have to look more deeply at equity. I think we do. I think we have to acknowledge the really very difficult history of this nation. I think we have to acknowledge and commit ourselves, all people, to eradicating racism. And it's hard to go forward if you don't deal with what has happened in the past. And so when we talk about justice, I think we have to be talking about it holistically. We can't make it just if we don't deal with the steps around how to get to true justice and not acknowledging that for many years in this nation, there was no justice.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any burning questions from our questioners? We have a little time before we wrap things up. Any other burning questions from our wonderful students that we've had?
Truly wonderful.
Yeah. I would like to thank you for your questions. They're very thoughtful questions, very comprehensive questions. Chief Justice Beasley, let me just say that as a faculty member here, I want to thank you for coming. This kind of engagement is important for our students, both on the undergraduate side and the law school, and it shows the commitment that you really have to pursuing justice in our communities by talking to these young folk, and we hope that this is the beginning of a conversation that will go on and on. So to wrap things up, we will hear from Ms. Abney again, if she has some things to add as a representative of PACE.
Again, Chief Beasley, Chief Justice Beasley, we thank you for your transparency and for answering this question so thoughtfully. You provided a great deal of insight, I think, to students here in the law school and for us undergraduate students as well. I think that you gave us a beautiful reminder that we choose how to engage. And I want to remind my fellow Eagles that there's power in that choice. So throughout this academic year and as we all move forward, I hope that you all choose daily. And I look forward to continuing this relationship in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as you see, Madam Chief Justice, our future is in good hands with the young people we have here. Are there any closing remarks that you would like to make for us? Any closing messages?
You know, the questions really have been very thoughtful today. We are in good hands, Dr. Hall. I'm excited about that. But I do hope you feel a sense of empowerment. I do hope that you do know that the future of this state and in this nation really is in your hands. And I don't want you to think of yourselves as just students, and I know you don't because you're all student leaders and you didn't have to be here today. But encourage your colleagues as well. This university is renowned, and her abilities shine through you. And don't take no for an answer. And even when you don't know what the journey looks like, if you believe that the journey is for you, claim it. You'll figure out the rest of it. And it really is important to have mentors in your life who support you, who will be truthful with you. And it's also important, you've got a community of folks around here at the university who will embrace you and who care about you, who are invested in your learning and in your future. But don't be afraid to reach out to folks who you don't know. The other thing that I could say in a room of 2,000, right? Don't be afraid to call, the communications director at the TV station, or the lawyer who's practicing transportation law, or whoever that person is who's practicing or doing something that you're interested in. And I'll tell you why you shouldn't be afraid to call. People like me love to talk with people like you, right? We love to talk about our work, we're excited about it, but we're also excited about you. But let me tell you this, and I am saying call, so that's picking up the phone, and I know it's foreign, but picking up the phone and actually talking into it. Because you know why I'm asking you to do that? Because most young students won't do it. So if you do it, you will distinguish yourselves off the bat. I'm proud of you all already. I'm excited about your futures, and if there's anything that I can ever do for you, I'm easy to find. Go Eagles.
Thank you so much, Madam Chief Justice. And again, we thank you. It was an honor and a privilege to have you here.
Thank you.
So we could give a good equal show for the Chief Justice, and she knows how to do it.
Yes,
she's a true Eagle. So we certainly want to thank PACE. We want to thank the law students here at NCCU. We want to thank the Student Government Association overall, as well as the Office of Student Engagement and Leadership, and the Office of Communications and Marketing here at NCCU. This is a wonderful event, and we hope this is the first, but this was the first of the Road to Justice Tour, as it should be. So thank you again, Madam Chief Justice. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Hall.
And thank you for those of you who joined us on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. We love you.